lose enough hands and you lose.
I think for once and for all,
You get it back.
I need to know
Right,
if it's
Mariano,
Argentinian or Argentine.
Everything just works out.
Because for most of my life,
In this episode of Weekly Poker Hand, we are playing 25, 50, 100 at Hustler Casino Live. Eric, under the gun, +1 with the 10 of hearts, 7 of diamonds, opts to limp. He'd probably rather raise or fold, but he decides to limp. Sure. He limps over to Mariano playing the stand-up game, the squid game, the knit game, whatever you want to call it. He needs to win a pot. He raises it to $400 with the queen 6 of spades. They are playing $55,000 deep. When you are playing this incredibly deep stacked, I think you'd rather just raise bigger in general, because look, your range is going to be pretty strong for the most part. And when you do have a hand that's at the bottom portion of your range, you don't really care if your opponent folds. So, especially given there's a $100 big blind ante, and you get a benefit from winning the pot, because then he loses his stand-up game button, I think you'd rather just raise a little bit bigger, like 600, 700, something like that. You may say, but Eric's just going to call any amount. Well, fine, if he's going to call any amount with a 10-7 offsuit from out of position, great, because most of Mariano's range is going to slaughter 10-7 offsuit. So, I think I'd rather just raise a little bit bigger. Whatever, Mariano's in there battling all day, every day. He's a great player. He has a great video blog, by the way. I'm going to presume he knows what is right. Folds back around to Eric with a 10-7 offsuit. He's certainly not going to fold for 300 more. Let's go to the flop.
I've been told it's Argentine. But everybody says Argentinian. So, I don't know. Do we put up a poll? Do I ask ChatGPT? I don't know what the hell.
The flop comes Jack of diamonds, 9 of spades, 6 of hearts. Eric with a gut shot checks. Mariano goes for a small bet, $300 into the $1,075 pot, which I think is reasonable. I mean, look, in terms of hands that want to bet small, bottom pair is it. Because if you bet small and your opponent folds, that's great. If you bet small and they call, fine. You know, you're putting in some money in okay shape. And if they do raise in this scenario, Mariano with his overcard, backdoor flush draw and backdoor straight draw and bottom pair can call the raise. If you bet big on the flop, though, like say Mariano pots it for 1,000 and then gets raised to 4,000 or something like that, well, now you probably have to let your hand go, which is certainly not what you want. So, I love the small bet. Eric with the gut shot can either call or raise. He opts to call. Let's head to the turn.
Gutter here for Eric. Can he find it? No. Although this turn may go check-check. Although Mariano does improve here to a gut shot as well as a card he can bluff. He blocks a straight. Let's see. Barrels. Big bully bets. Overbet. 2,400.
The turn is the king of diamonds. Eric checks. If I was in Mariano's shoes here, I probably would have just checked it back. Mariano, though, has very different ideas. He goes for an overbet. The pot's 1,675. He makes it 2,400. This is clearly designed to target stuff like a jack or a 9 or some sort of draw. And if your opponent does fold a jack or a 9, fantastic. Maybe this is a spot where Mariano just plans to blast it off on a lot of rivers. I'm not really sure. Again, this is a spot where the deep stacked cash game pros absolutely demolish some of their opponents. Because if you can make your opponent fold out a hand like a jack in this scenario, if you bet the turn and then blast the river, maybe even a king, like say your opponent did have king 10, maybe they call the turn and then fold to a big river bet. Maybe this is a spot where you win a ton of the time. Yeah, you have to risk a lot, but if you're winning the pot almost every time, it might be worth it, right? Mariano does blast it, $2,400. Now, Eric, with his double gut shot, is now in a pretty rough spot. Let's see how he proceeds.
Sneaky double gut shot for Eric here, as well as a diamond. Any 8, any queen. He's finding a raise. This guy has heart, man. Jeez, he has heart.
10 high out of position. Calling is not that appealing. Folding a double gut shot is also not that appealing, so Eric puts in the raise. Now look, typically when your opponent overbets the turn, they're saying I have either a really good made hand, a really good draw, or some total trash, probably a random 10 or a random queen. Now, the question is should you raise all that often against that range? And the answer is usually just no. I think this 10-7 should probably fold in general, but if you did want to find a bluff, I don't mind it, right? If you do spike a straight on the river, it's almost always good. You can continue bluffing on a lot of rivers. I mean, the 7 of diamonds is not that relevant of a blocker, but if the river brings a diamond, you have a blocker to a flush, which is an auto call for Mariano, which means that when you block some of his auto calls, you have a pretty good bluffing hand. Also, he blocks queen 10, which is great. So, I don't mind it. I think given they are somewhat deep stacked, you'd probably rather go a little bit bigger in the situation, because when you go 4,000 more into a pot that's 10,500 at the moment after the raise, Mariano's going to call with any sort of decent pair / draw. And you got to realize a lot of his pre-flop raising range will be hands like king queen, king 10, queen jack, jack 10. Now, will he overbet the turn with those? I don't know. But if he does have a pair and a gut shot, he's not going to fold. If he has a flush draw, he's not going to fold. So I think you want to go a little bit bigger to try to really pressure those hands. That said, maybe he doesn't fold those ever. So if that's the case, then you're really just trying to target his total trash, which maybe he has, maybe he doesn't. It's tough to know. Let's see if Mariano sticks around.
Mariano somehow does not believe. Blocks a set. Blocks queen 10. Doesn't have a diamond. Suspicious. Two high-level players trying to outplay each other on this turn, and Mariano calls. Not what Eric wants to see. Can he follow through?
Mariano makes the call, and you may be a little bit surprised to see this call in this situation, but you have to realize, in position, getting pretty good odds in a spot where your opponent's range should be pretty good made hands, really good made hands, and draws, bottom pair is actually okay. Also, he has the queen, which gives him 4 decent outs. I realize the 10 of diamonds is not great, but he has 4 decent outs to a very good hand that's just never ever folding, right? 6 is also probably good. Queen could be good. We see it's not this time, but it could be. So look, in position, you have to stick around pretty wide, and Mariano realizes that. Let's head to the river.
Diamond. Not what Mariano wants to see. Eric might need to fire 2/3. Do the make-believe check. You know you don't have 2 of them. Probably need to see something in the tune of 11K. He's grabbing
15,000. 15.
pot size wager from Eric. This kid has heart, man.
The river is the 3 of diamonds. Eric, with his 10 high, flush blocker, in my mind has a very easy bluff. He goes for pot, which is great. The problem, though, is I think he should perhaps go either much bigger or smaller. Because in the spot, he always wants to ask, well, when you're bluffing, you always want to ask, what am I trying to get my opponent to fold? We're not trying to get our opponent to fold a flush. They're never going to fold a flush. We're not going to try to get him to fold a straight. They're never going to fold a straight. We're trying to get the opponent to fold out a king or maybe a jack. Now, I don't know if a jack's going to overbet the turn like he did. So really, we're trying to get him off of a king or nothing, like 10-8 or something like bottom pair that decided to call the turn raise. So if we're trying to get the opponent to fold nothing, maybe like ace queen, queen 10, not queen 10, what am I saying? Ace queen, ace 10, or 10-8. I think we can go pretty small, like half pot. If we're trying to make him fold out a king, though, I'm not sure pot's the ideal size. I think the ideal size is going to be bigger, like 1.5x pot, maybe 2x pot, maybe even all in. The problem with all in is that whenever you do run into a flush or queen 10 or a set, maybe even two pair. You're just going to get snapped off every time. It's tough to say what is ideal in this scenario. I'm not sure pot's ideal to get the opponent off of a king, though. And like I said, I'm not sure he's betting the turn for overpot with a jack or a 9 all that often, although maybe he would bet something like queen jack in this manner. Ugh, tough spot to know what the right bet size is. Whenever I feel pretty dirty about using a really big bet size, sometimes I'll just not use the big bet size with the bluff all that often unless I really block the nuts. So like if he had the ace of diamonds or maybe the queen of diamonds. And I think I'd use the 7 of diamonds instead with a smaller bet size. But hey, 15,000 shows a lot of heart. Let's see if Mariano can call with the bottom pair.
I mean, this would be fascinating if Mariano finds a way to not give up. Honestly, it would be disheartening for Eric. Eric, you've played this fantastically. But have you met Mariano? The fact that Mariano has not released his hand shows the level of play these guys are on right now. Way above the rim. Would he bet pot with queen 10? Because that's what he's saying he had on the turn. Maybe not. So what is he at? Feels like some diamond combos make sense. I would love to know what Mariano's thinking about right now. This would be disheartening if Eric loses to queen 6 here, I promise you. This man looks calm. Pulse is running a little bit, though. Hard to see.
Do you have big chips left, or is it just the greens?
It's just the greens.
Okay.
Man, this would be disheartening for Eric. I'm rooting for Eric to get this through just because he's played this hand so G. Oh, Mariano's just, he senses something. It wouldn't be fair. Oh my God, how? How does he do that? Wow. That's not fair. Oh my God, Mariano, how?
Wow. That was gangster.
They both, I mean.
Mariano gives it a ton of thought and then finds the call. You'd be shocked to see this call, but if he does not think Eric will check raise the turn with too many flush draws, which some people will, some people won't, this flush on the river is actually not that bad for Mariano, because if Eric has no or very few flush draws in his range, then this is essentially a brick. So the question then becomes, will Eric make this big bet on the river with something like two pair or a king? And I would venture to say probably not. Most people don't do that. If all of that is true, this queen 6 is a pretty good hand to call with, especially given he blocks king queen, which may check raise the turn and bet the river normally. He also blocks queen 10, which would definitely check raise the turn and then bet the river. So given Mariano's exact hand, if he's not worried about the flush draw that came in, I think it's a pretty nice spot to call. Mariano has a ton of heart as well. He finds the call. He scoops a giant pot with, I guess it's not bottom pair, close enough to bottom pair. Mariano has quickly climbed the stakes of the high stake cash game circuit. He's in there battling all day, every day. What I want to know is, who is your favorite player who has quickly climbed the ranks very recently? Let me know in the comment section down below. While you're there, do me a favor, click the like and subscribe button, and I'll talk to you next time.